Did Good morning. Good morning. I'm going to go ahead and try to get started. Good morning. Welcome, everybody. We're going to have the 10 o'clock hour only lasts for 40 minutes this morning, so we're going to try to be efficient with time today. My name's Dave McMath. I'm going to talk for a little bit about St. Paul's St. Paul's Shelter Ministries over the winter. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to talk hopefully for 10 minutes now, and then we're going to have a panel of volunteers who will talk about their experiences over the winter, and then we will reconvene back at the tables and try to have small groups to talk about plans for the future, concerns about the past, and the ministry in general. So thank you all for coming. I would appreciate if you could join me to begin with in a prayer for social justice. Let us pray. Grant, O God, that your holy and life-giving Spirit may so move every human heart that barriers which divide us may crumble, suspicions disappear, and hatred cease. That our divisions being healed, we may live in justice and peace through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. All right, thank you. Very quick overview of what we did this winter. When the temperature was 30 degrees or below, St. Paul's opened its doors and let people who sleep around the church come in and sleep. Mostly in this space. We had this space, we had the North Parish Hall, we had a third space up above outside the children's wing, and on 4 occasions, based on logistical issues, we actually had people sleep in the nave of the church. So it was a wonderful ministry. These are things that we highlight in a lot of our training stuff, and the one that I want to just call out is we consider this a justice ministry. Everybody deserves a warm place to sleep. This is not so much a charity ministry. It's nice. It's a good thing to do, but it really is a justice ministry. We don't expect, we ask people when we do the trainings not to assume that you know what people need for help. We do a lot of listening, and we do not expect people to thank us. So that's sort of the setup that we try to give in all the training materials that we do. I'm going to do this part fast because I want to let the panelists speak. And also I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our guests. This is a visual representation of when we were open. We were open for 38 nights this winter. January was rough, right? January, you might remember some of the events of January. We were here a lot. It was very crowded. It was noisy. And I should have asked before how many people you think can sleep comfortably in here. The number is less than 49. So there were some nights when it was really crowded, but we were able to adapt, and we never turned anybody away because of space in the church. We also had over 50 volunteers serve at least one shift over the 38 nights. We're not the only ones in town who do this. There are 3 other sort of organizations. The Crew organization is the city's official cold weather response. Genesis and Seven Hills organize that. They open when it's 15 degrees. Salvation Army is open year-round. They have a permanent shelter or an ongoing shelter that you can stay for 90 days. And when it gets cold, they open up their emergency response as well when it's 32. That gets about 30 or 40 more beds. And then there's also the Northwest Arkansas Continuum of Care. We worked with them from the beginning of this project. They donated some kennels for us to help people so we could have people with pets. And they also were able to provide hotel one night when a family came that we couldn't house here, a woman with 2 children. We weren't able to have them here, so we got them to a hotel. Okay, so that was my super brief overview of what the program is. I want to talk a lot more about our guests. Jim Norris and I did a survey of some of the guests, some of the people who have stayed around campus. It's a skewed survey because the only people that we could talk to are the ones who still have a connection with St. Paul's. There were a lot of people who came here, spent the night, and then moved back to Southtown. We didn't get to talk to a lot of them. I came to I came to community meals a couple of times to get some people. But it's a skewed response based on people who have connection to St. Paul's. We also kept track of some basic demographic information. So most of our guests were men. We had one child over the course of the winter. Most people traveled less than 1 mile to get here. Everybody learned about St. Paul's via word of mouth. We didn't have any mechanism to advertise, and it wouldn't have helped anyway because no one in our target population would be reading our Facebook pages. We had several pets, mostly dogs, a few cats, and at least one rabbit was here. About half of the people were single men or single women. We had a few couples, several couples, and a few kind of larger family groups, 4 or 5 people who consider themselves a family. About half the people that we surveyed stayed here 5 to 10 nights. A few, 2 or 3, stayed more than 20. So that's a little bit about our population. As part of the survey, we asked several statements and said, do you agree, disagree, or neutral about these statements? So this is just a representation of some of them. This was to figure out whether we as a ministry had anticipated needs well. So one of the things that we debated was whether we needed security guards here or sort of heightened security presence, and the answer was pretty much no. Most people disagreed that they would have felt more safe if there had been police here. We also had a screening process for people with drugs or weapons, so they couldn't have them in the church, and it was agreed that we did a decent job with that, which was nice. It was nice to hear because I have the process consisted of asking people, and in fact, that turned out to be relatively effective. I'll skim a little bit. The one that I think is really fascinating is St. Paul's should have limited the number of people who could spend the night, was very evenly divided. It was crowded in here, but a decent number of people think that we should have a cap somehow, and a decent number of people think we should just let everybody through, right? And that was one of our biggest challenges, was how to handle. One of the biggest things that the leadership group talked about was how, if at all, should we limit the number of people who can access the space? And we decided not to limit it. We just decided to ask for more volunteers, and it worked out for this winter. We also asked about what people wanted, right? All we offered here was the space. We had coffee, and we have space and warmth, and those are the things that St. Paul's has to offer in abundance. Stephanie will talk about some food. We'll talk about blankets as part of the panel, but there's some amenities that we could have asked about. The first 2 people I ran through the survey through, the questions were of the form St. Paul should have provided, or I should have been able to. And on those, no one took the bait. No one that I spoke to said, oh yeah, you guys should change. Everything was, you were fine, right? But when I changed the question to, I wish I could have, I got what I felt like were more reasonable responses. Would have been nice to have more blankets, that's gratifying to me because that is the place that we focused, right? We worked to provide more blankets. You can always have more blankets, but people did not particularly want cots. Cots would be complicated here. Shower, laundry, that'd be awesome, right? If we could let people. Those are infrastructure changes, though. But we have some data, at least some anecdote, that says that people might appreciate that if we could do that. And I wish I'd been allowed to store things at the church. That was a huge one for a lot of people. We did not allow people to store things at the church. We also asked some more open-ended questions. Reasonable temperature. So 30 degrees was where we were. 3 people said that was okay. 6 people would be okay. Would like to be 31 to 35, 35 degrees. There are about 80 nights per year in Fayetteville when the temperature gets below 30. We only had 38 this year, so it's a warm winter, right? But I do challenge you to think, where would you like to sleep tonight? It's only going to be in the 40s. Low's going to be in the 40s tonight. You want to sleep outside? So people, that's what our guests would like. We asked people, if you had a chance to sleep here or sleep somewhere else, why did you go somewhere else? So sometimes it was too crowded. Genesis had cots and pillows. General comments. If you can't respect this church and these grounds, you shouldn't be here. That was one of our guests told me that. You guys are patient and trusting, so that's a nod to our volunteers. And we asked if you would come here next year. I would stay here next year, but I hope I'm not homeless. And these are not people who, want to be here. They appreciate our ability to host them, but they don't want to be homeless, by and large. We asked for pleasant memories. On that first night, I made everyone tea while another guest played the piano. That was from one of our guests. The first couple nights, we didn't have a lot of rules, so we let people go in the kitchen, and he found the tea, and he made the tea. It was great. It was a lovely night. The volunteer, we took care of someone's dog. We had the ambulances were called 4 times over the winter. One woman had to go to the hospital. She had a dog. We took care of it. She was very appreciative of that. Being able to sit next to one of my best friends and share an evening conversation before I went to sleep from one of our guests. There are so many things but saying prayers at 7:30 with that lady priest, it was appreciated. And they, when we stayed in the old part of the church, it was beautiful. But what would we do differently? We should open up earlier if people had their way. We opened up at 8. We were open from 8 to 7. Let people come in when it's cold. We required people to wait outside. We did that by February. In December and January, people came and sat in the Welcome Center. That got pretty chaotic. So we were required, because of the space that we have, to force people to wait outside while we set up. It would have been nice if we didn't have to do that. Limit the chaos, alcohol restrictions. It was hard to carry things around constantly. And I would have loved to store things at the church during the day, but it's not your responsibility to take care of my things. But throwing away the sleeping bags was bad. We did go around the church, and things that were left went into the dumpsters. And that was sad for everybody, but it's a thing that the church had to do. Yeah. That's my quick overview. I could only give you a very small glimpse at some of our guests. They're wonderful people. They are hardworking people. It is difficult. It takes a lot of energy to be homeless in this town. You spend a lot of time looking for resources. You spend a lot of time figuring out what's going to happen to you next. They're all wonderful people. I'm not going to talk about this slide because we'll talk about that in the smaller groups. Thank you. I'm going to try to get us out of here at 10:50, so if you guys could take 15 minutes. So at 10:35. So we're going to have a panel discussion now. Yes.
Hello, I'm Jim Norris, and I'd like to introduce our panelists. Hershey Garner, Tammy Bannister-Trazak, Brian Jones, Claudia Moreno, and Stephanie Barr. And each one of these persons have spent one or multiple nights here to help us. And so a question for you all. What did you expect your neighbors to be like before you signed up? Just popcorn it, whoever feels called.
I don't know if I had any expectations with it, but before starting this ministry, I hadn't really had any contact with the unhoused population. But I just remember being more aware in these last few years of seeing more unhoused people around Fayetteville and wanting to do something about it. And I was really, really grateful to St. Paul's for giving us the opportunity to be able to do something other than give someone just a few dollars by the side of the road.
Thanks, Stephanie.
I knew that our guests were going to be very vulnerable in different layers, like in not just one vulnerability, but multiple vulnerabilities.
I really didn't know what I thought the guests would be like. I just saw that the ministry was going to happen, and I just thought that was a good thing to do. And I think I realized after having volunteered a few nights that initially going into it, I had thought that people were going to show up and just be grateful to have a place to stay, and that it was going to feel really good as to what we were doing.
I really had no idea what to expect. I had seen several of our guests around the church in all kinds of weather, and when I saw them outside the parish hall, sometimes either at the Friendly Fridge or the Little Free Pantry, I didn't really know how to behave around them, and it felt weird. So when the ministry opened up, I saw that as a great opportunity to expand my own horizons in getting to know these very special people. And I've really enjoyed doing that. I've become more comfortable with myself and with them, and it's been wonderful to see them and have them see me.
Well, the two instigators of this should be up here also, Jim and David. But the thing that struck me was that it's a very, more than I thought it would be, a heterogeneous population. It's not a one-size-fits-all ministry.
Thank you all. So next question is, how, if at all, did your understanding change as a result of your work this winter?
I don't think I expected to be able to hear some of the stories coming in that people would tell me, you know, as you're serving food or as you're settling down for the night, the level of trauma that some people have gone through in their lives and the number of obstacles that people have had in their lives. And it makes you really understand how someone with that many challenges or that much pain or that much trauma could wind up in some of these situations. And I don't think I was emotionally prepared for that. And I think that was one of the harder parts for me.
Thank you.
Yeah. So for me is I approach to the vulnerability of people not understanding why and not pretending to understand why, because the suffering of the world is horrible, period. And if I do pretend to understand that, I get immersed into questions for which I do not have answers. It's just as simple as that. I just approach to this with compassion, with love, because that's what God is calling us to do. But I do not pretend to understand because it's way too complex for me, for my emotions, my brain, my spirituality. I just know I'm called to show mercy, compassion, and kindness.
I think as it went on and the winter got even colder, the more I realized really what the people were going through throughout the day leading up to the evening. Most, were glad to come inside, but it wasn't like a happiness to be here. It was, they've been out in the cold all day. Many of them really hungry, and they're not even, most of them were not even having an awareness of maybe what our role was or even how we were thinking or feeling. They were just in survival mode. And so to be able to have a place to get into and to have just their very basic needs met and to feel safe was the priority. And I think what I also didn't realize is how good it felt to have the communication that we all had as a team through the emails and kind of the nimbleness of the leaders to have ever-evolving policies that we could really bank on when we came, because there was a lot of chaos and there'd be a lot of new situations every time to where we'd have to really figure out what was best in that moment. And so having the teamwork and being able to rely on that made it to where we really felt like we could handle people that were coming in having had chaotic days and having been in survival mode.
For me, like Claudia, I'm very empathetic. And I didn't think I'd... Seeing the trauma and pain of some of these people and how they become closed off from community is really hard. And like Claudia, there's no way I could understand it. I've never been in that situation. And I wanted to be able to show them some grace without patronizing, without thinking like I had all the answers, because I have none. But to be able to be of service to them, my role was to come and prepare coffee and lay some things out and greet them when they got here. And I've never been real good with remembering names, which is really tough. But I'm getting better at it. And learning their names and speaking to them and seeing them. And now if I see one of them outside and I can, mention their name and say hello, and they just light up, or they don't light up. They're having a rough day, and that's okay too. But it's really seeing them as deserving of God's grace as much, if not more, than the rest of us who, by and large, live a very blessed life. And their lives are hard, and I wanted to be able to make it less hard.
One more time on the question.
Thanks, Hershey.
I'm easily distracted.
How, if at all, did your understanding change as a result of your work this winter?
I think my understanding changed. It was sort of like building a ship while you're in the middle of the voyage. And we need to do things, I think, a little differently. But the good thing is we got several months to figure out how to meet this need in a more therapeutic, holistic way for our community.
I want to thank you all for participating. One last question. Is there anything else you want to share with the rest of our parishioners, our fellow parishioners, that you experienced that you think is important for them to know?
Oh, I would say if you think you'd be interested in helping with this ministry, step right up. We've got a wonderful team of support team, the rest of us. And yes, we're still figuring it out as we go, but we trust each other and we work things out. And it's okay to be a little afraid stepping into it. But it's a very, very worthy ministry, and we'd love to have you. Thank you.
My experience with St. Paul's was I've only been here a year. So what I've known about St. Paul's for many years is how accepting of a community it is and how much of almost an outlier it is in Northwest Arkansas. And what I experienced with some of the guests that stayed here is they feel the same way, in the sense that they don't feel accepted or cared about in a lot of other places around here, whether it's churches or businesses or just the community. And they really had a heavy reliance on the ability for St. Paul's to open its doors to them. And so I think that's something that I want to, be a part of carrying forward, is that they feel that they can bank on being accepted and loved here, even when they can't turn to really any other places for that.
So I will invite all of you to have open minds, open hearts, because by providing this type of service, we are being changed in ways that we are just trying to figure it out how. It's not only about the service we give to others, it's through the process of doing that, we are also transformed as a community.
When people come in, they're not just cold, they're hungry. and we were able to provide meals, really simple, hot meals for people when they were coming in. So if that's something that you feel called to do, I feel like it was a really important part of the ministry, particularly in those days where it was in the 20s all day, right? And so it really, really was important for people to be able to have a hot meal. So if that's something you want to be involved in, even if you don't want to necessarily be, with the warming ministry directly, then that's a really good thing to be able to do.
The team members have different roles. You can come help set up, make coffee, greet people, help them get settled, just sit with them. If they want to talk, fine. If they don't want to talk, just be with them. Another role is to stay all night or just stay part of the night. And the third role is to come in the morning and make coffee again, hot coffee in the morning for them, and help them as well as you can prepare for their day outside. You don't have to stay all night. You don't have to stay, 8, 10 hours, just a few hours. And it's really meaningful.
Well, I'd like to thank you all. I hope you'll join me in thanking those guys for your service and care. You guys are all set.
All right. Thank you, guys. Okay. Logistical challenge. I would love people to transition and go sit at the tables together if possible, because I would like people to talk for a few minutes about the warming center, about the shelter ministries in general. And on the tables, there's some forms. While you're transitioning back to sit at the tables, I'll try to explain sort of the goal here. We are very interested in getting feedback about how our ministry affected the rest of the church and about how people feel about the ministry in general. So I would love to hear from people who think that things went wrong this winter and can help us understand how to change things for next year. And I would also love to hear if anybody's brave in this slightly safe space to talk about how this was a bad idea. We've done a great job, I think, of inviting the people who really wanted to be part of the ministry to be part of it. But we have not heard so much from the people who disagree. So I'm very interested if you can share some of that. Hopefully we have enough so that we can have at least one person who's been a volunteer at each table to be kind of the shepherd moderator. We will try to reconvene in about 10 minutes to talk about the outcomes. If you would prefer to just enter your information on the form, there's a QR code. You can just take the survey yourself and give us your personal opinions about things. We'll be back in about 10 minutes. So it's 10:45, and I know a lot of people need to go back to 11 o'clock church in just a few minutes, and I hate to make everybody be quiet. Thank you for the good discussions. Is there anybody who would like to speak for their table or talk about some of the things that you guys discussed? Okay.
What I'd like to say is a question that was left off the top of the survey. And the question I would have liked to have seen answered is, what was the positive changes and possibly the joy that seeing the population of the shelter interacting with the congregation had? Because that's the one that's on my heart. And I often attended the 9 o'clock service. And on Sunday mornings when I would come in here and there were guests and people in the parish who were interacting, eating meals together, and those guests had stayed here overnight because it was cold, that filled my heart in a way that makes me want to be here. And the other thing I want to say about that is that there were some times when the overnight guests were full participants in the church service by reading the lesson, carrying the cross, and all of it was because they were allowed to stay and eat breakfast. And when that shifted, something inside me changed too, because I think somebody on the panel said that being a volunteer and being part of this changes you. Well, it was interacting with the guests at the services on Wednesday night and on Sunday mornings that was really transformational for me.
Hi. A couple of us asked about the summer. It's supposed to be brutally hot this summer, and I remember last summer got brutally hot. Could there be any accommodations so that folks could sleep over if the weather got past a certain degree? I noticed, I think it's Salvation Army has a cooling center. I'm just wondering if something like that could be in the works. A couple of us have been wondering about that.
The logistics of a cooling center are very different from the logistics of a warming center, but yes, basically. Anyone else?
It seems like the purpose of Christianity is to afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted, and both of those opportunities pose the potential for self-transformation.
I thought since Evan volunteered me, I should volunteer to speak. Let's see. How did it cause problems, overlap of other church groups, and a strain on the staff that were here to volunteer and probably who came in the mornings? What is something that we learned? We don't have to be there all night, and there's support when you do come. You can, there's a flexibility in choosing where you volunteer. And how should St. Paul expand or limit the shelter ministries going forward? We'd mentioned lockers for people's personal goods, and something else just popped in my head that I didn't pass by the group, but it'd be nice if we could figure a way out to include some of the guests with assigned tasks so that they had input into what, or a job, if you will, in the evening.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. So if you would like to sign up, if you'd like more information, you can follow the link. That link will also be on the YouTube page. You can get to the form where there's a place to submit your name if you want to provide more feedback, get on our email list, or generally learn more. This is a big undertaking. We need a lot of volunteers, and we need a lot of people who have vision for how this should work in the church. Thank you all for coming and participating, and have a wonderful Sunday.